Hello, fellow Toolboxers. Thanks for joining us. Episode number 343. We're going to have an interview with my friend, a great colleague of ours in the Northeast, Andrew Wilson. He's also going to be on a panel at the Upstate New York's Northern Border Conference. It's coming up on September 20th. Hopefully, you can make it. But you have a list of stuff that he's been talking about, and we'll see how far we get into it. Talking immigration law, our favorite thing to do. I want to especially thank the sponsor of this episode, Serenade e-immigration by Serenade. You must either be using the software already or you've heard about it. A lot of good things. Immigration by Serenade is one of the top immigration software platforms for, not just the basic forms, but different operations for your business, billing and client portals and communications and just all the vast amount of stuff. Just kind of learning it all as a whole thing. They do great training and they have a free demo that you can check out the software. Great management team over there. I really like them a lot. If you want to learn more, go to serenade.com, serenade with a C, to get more and let them know John from the Toolbox sent you. Having said all that, all the information right here is not intended for individual legal guidance. Please consult with an immigration attorney for your case, but you all know that already. So without further ado, let's get it started. Hey, Andrew, thanks for coming on the show again.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Same here, same here. So Andrew's been on the show before. I got to find what number podcast it was, but you're going to be on a panel at the Upstate New York's Northern Border Conference coming up in September 20th. So I want to get you on to talk about it, promote it. But if you want your background, I'll plug the other recording. But could you just give a brief of where your practice is and what kind of cases you handle?
Sure. So, for better or for worse, I've been practicing for over 25 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my work is employment based, and the majority of that would be with, companies of all sizes. Certainly a good chunk of multinationals, but smaller size companies as well, and just do a lot of the meat and potatoes of employment based immigration. Certainly, I'm in Buffalo, so I have a large focus with the border, and we do some kind of unique things with healthcare groups and professional sports teams as well.
Each of those are niches, healthcare groups and professional teams. I know lawyers that just do each one of those, and that's a whole world on itself. Um, with regard to the your practice itself, how many lawyers or paralegals? How does that structure look like?
So I'm at a larger firm. It's called Lippis Mathias. In total, we have about 200 attorneys right now in the firm as a whole. And just within our immigration group's very small. It's just four attorneys and four paralegals.
So that's a world itself. How you there's a whole niche of law firms that are like yourself, like a small immigration practice group within a large one, especially because we do flat rates and stuff. And like they're just looking at us like we're crazy. Like how do you? So it's managing that
Yeah,
relationship is a whole beast itself. I actually wanted to make a toolbox practice group because I know so many people like yourself who are like part of big firms, small, and there's so much information you share, but I have a hard time setting it up. But uh, that we'll save that conversation for another day. So, what is the panel that you're going to be on? What is it about? What's the title? What's it about at the Northern Border Conference?
so yes, we're pretty excited for our Northern Border Conference this year. I actually got it so long ago, I won't remember when, but I helped organize two Northern Border Conferences probably about 20 years ago.
Hmm.
And at that time, the Northern Border Conference had mostly been talking about Northern border issues, and a lot of speakers were local. And then we had the idea of, well, let's open this up so we can learn more from our colleagues around the country. And back then, we had some great speakers come in from all over. I remember Ron Klasko, different speakers from Florida that came in and talked about the wide array of immigration issues that everyone deals with.
Yeah.
And the Northern Border Conference, again, the last 10 years probably focused more just on Northern border issues. And I know Sabrina wanted to expand that.
Yeah.
So we're bringing in speakers from all over the country, kind of well known individuals, certainly from AILA, to talk about different topics. The panel that I am talking about is kind of that generic hot topics within employment based immigration. But it has Nell Barker from Chicago's coming in, Vince Lau from Boston, and two local attorneys, Jennifer Boehm and Jill Appa. We're talking about kind of the new perm because it still is relatively new. We're talking about Mexican TNs and all some of the issues going on with that right now.
Well, let's stop right there because I have a bunch of these questions I want to ask, and you mentioned Mexican TNs in particular. I had a consultation with Mexican TN today, so I want to pick your brain. Well, the worry I've had is the ability to get an interview has been difficult. The last Mexican TN I did was in January. I usually do Canadians, which is easy, just go to the border. But I took like 4 or 5 6 months to get an appointment. We kept logging in and went from like 6 7 months down to 4 because we got the earlier date. But I went this morning, and our Department of State has the timeline, like generic timelines of how long it takes to get an interview kind of thing. They don't have one for
Yep.
TN. For H1B, like Mexico City was like 7 days or one day. So is the timeline back to normal, or is that just wishful thinking? Because we haven't logged into a calendar yet. What comments do you have about that?
My understanding is that the timeline to obtain a visa appointment for TNs is still pretty backlogged.
Oh, okay. That's always
Other non-immigrant categories certainly may be better or more normal, but I still see a large backlog for Mexican nationals, or sorry, for TNs through the U.S. consulates in Mexico, and we are starting to see reports of higher denial rates for TNs for Mexicans through those consulates. My understanding again is that a lot of those denials are for individuals in the automotive industry, and they may be cases where consular officers believe those individuals are more trades work than engineering work. But we still are seeing long delays in actually getting TN visa appointments, and there's higher denial rates than there have been in the
Yeah,
past.
I had a fortune. I rarely take on a case that's going to be a denial. So I took this one management consultant, and it was a perfect one because the person's expertise was that. And they had actually worked for the company abroad, but it wasn't an executive or managerial position per se. And so they denied him, saying you should just saying, oh, just redo it and do an L1. This wasn't supposed to be a TN. This is actually an L1. Not knowing like L1 is a million hoops you have to jump through, and it wasn't appropriate for this case. The TN fit perfectly. But then to
Mm.
go get a new things, it already took like 5 months to get an interview, and then the company was just like burned out at that point. So it's very frustrating because when they do this kind of stuff, just venting a little bit like that. But that's the thing about Canada's so much easier because just show up at the border and go. They probably should. I mean, who knows if they're gonna do that? But that should be the Mexican case too. That they could just show up CBP at the border, port of entry, or something like that, and talk it through. Because with these backlogs, it just destroys trade when people are trying to go back and forth in these kind of cases.
Yeah, there are some positives with Mexican TNs going on right now. One is obviously the 4-year visa. There is the option to obtain a visa stamp approval valid for four
Oh
years,
wow, for
so
TN?
that can be helpful for a TN. Yep.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that when that happened. I thought it was 3 years max the first time around.
That was well. I mean, the maximum you can be in TN status. The TN approval is only going to be for 3 years,
Hmm.
but they will approve a visa stamp in your passport for 4 years. That came around maybe about last year. There's a
Okay.
little extra fee for that, and there is some success with individuals obtaining new TN approvals through a new company at the border without having to go back through the consulate. So if they have one of those 4-year visas and they change jobs and have a new TN employer, there is success stories of going to the border down south and obtaining a new TN without having to go through the consulate or CIS.
That's
So there
incredible.
are scenarios where a Mexican national can go to the border to
Mhm.
obtain a new TN.
That's incredible. I was debating. I can't remember if it's the case, but like if they do change the status in the U.S., they still need to get a visa if they leave and want to come back in. CBP won't take on the I-129 approval on its own, right? Or they still need a visa.
Not its own. You either have to have the visa or qualify for automatic visa revalidation.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, right now they're on a L2 and they're switching to a TN in this case, and they have an L visa. Is that could you do automatic validation with that?
So, what are the
None of this
facts
is
again?
independent for individual
What
legal
what type
matters.
of visa stamp do they have in their
They
passport?
have an L2 and they're going to switch to TN because the L1 is like switching to H1B. The company's doing all sorts of stuff. So they're the spouse, so they need independent work authorization now because the L2 is ending. and I didn't think about automatic revalidation. So let's see.
If they have an L2 visa, whether it's still valid or expired, and they obtain a TN approval through the service center, they can travel to Canada or Mexico for less than 30 days and come back with that USCIS
Wow.
approval and their prior visa. They can do automatic revalidation.
That is incredible. It's like I've had my own consultation with you. I love these. This is the magic of this podcast. They get to ask my own questions from the experts. But the only downside of USCIS processing is the high filing fee requirement because the company that they probably got to do premium processing, and so that's going to set them back like how much I-129 is what like for TN $700 or something. That I can't remember. It's less than that probably. Uh,
I wonder if it's even. I thought, yeah, I can't. I got to look at it too. I was
yeah,
wondering if it
charge.
was even up to 1,000, but yeah, I mean, if you did that with premium processing, the way I try and look at it in some cases is that you are saving potentially on travel and hotel if
Yeah,
you had to go through the visa process. And certainly right now, if there are issues with scrutiny for TNs at the consulates, you may have a little more certainty through the service center.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, the person wants to go and visit Mexico back and forth, but it's all, as long as the trips are always less than 30 days. I think automatic validation, even if you have an expired visa, it's okay too, right?
Yep.
Um, so I'm gonna go through the rules of it again, but um, new visa, yeah. So they just don't be outside for more than 3 months, and then just keep doing that over and over again.
They're just stuck to trips to Canada or Mexico for less than 30 days.
Yeah. Yeah, just limit them, but they could at the same time, if there's delays for the embassy processing or consul processing, they could at least book it, work here, be here, and then get that visa later if it's like massive delays. But it's another option. I mean, it's a little more expensive in certain areas, maybe save some money on the other end. But it's good to know. Well, I'm glad we talked. It's information. It's got to be helpful for other people as well. So that was my TN question. So let me pick your raise and what the next stuff will go. So
Sure.
when it comes to H-1B filings, there's pros and cons of new H-1B system, future online. So what's going on with the new online filing for H-1Bs?
Yeah, I have not. It's interesting. I talked to Nell Barker yesterday while we were preparing for our panel because she has experience with some of these online filings. I've been too scared to jump into that just in case there are any quirks. I know there were some hiccups and headaches with the the lottery filings. Some of those online filings weren't going very well, but
I think they gave a couple of extra days or something like that because at least the registration or the lottery system had broke down or something. They gave like a couple extra days this year.
yeah, there's something about with online filings were not being recorded or registered in their system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think they're going to. I think they're useful, but you can't do it if you're also filing with an I-539. So they're pretty limited. They're really only useful if it's just the H-1B individual themselves. You can't
Yeah.
attach like the 539 to it as well. It's nice that you can do your payments online and all of that. In one advantage was there's lots of stories with improper rejections
Yeah.
for filings with the new forms and the new filing fees. When you do an online filing, as Nell noted, you're not going to get a rejection. You know that it's accepted.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bumpy still right now. Again, it's probably too limited and not consistent enough that it's something that I use. I can only imagine they're going in that direction, but they're still pretty far behind, obviously, the DOL with online filings.
Sure.
I mean, they obviously want to go to online filing because they have new filing fees that separate for online filings. I just don't think the consistency and the reliability is there enough for me right now.
And they do stuff like we just started filing these pro and place cases for Biden's Keeping Families Together program, and this online filing only, which wasn't as bad the processing of it, but they're not sending paper stuff. So all of a sudden they did biometrics notices, and I'm just waiting. And then someone said, "Oh, I just didn't read the instructions well enough or something." But I'm like, "Oh, you have to keep checking the online system for stuff like that." So that's kind of annoying. So I still want to get something on paper, and then it just you never know. Sometimes it didn't have this case, but I have other cases where, like a adjustment case. it goes in the online system, but there's no option to receipts don't show up, RFEs got pop up don't show up, and they're still or you can't upload documents. So it's there's like random inconsistencies in it that like make you really fearful of what's going on. Really bad happened right now is I got a couple of marriage-based cases approved in Texas in about 100 days ago, right when that hurricane happened, and
Mm,
it got approved. We're waiting a 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 9 days pass. Contact FBC multiple times. Now they say USCIS can't find it. Call USCIS. I call USCIS today. They're like, wait 15 to 30 days. We'll follow up with you. We may have to send a copy of the filing for them to do it. I'm like, I thought this all scanned. How do you lose a scanned
right.
file? Like, how is this impossible? And the clients obviously they're freaking out. They're angry at us, and like, 4 months unnecessarily waiting just to even get an NBC notice. 4 months plus now. So it's just like this. You see this kind of stuff, you're like, what's going on? What's going on
I,
here?
I have definitely noticed more intake errors or issues since the new filing fees. I mean, since April,
Yeah.
and you have the new form. There's definitely been more confusion as to exactly what we're filing, what the applicable filing fee is,
Yeah. The new
things getting
asylum
sent
fee
back
added, everything.
when they shouldn't have, and having to refile. That has been really frustrating.
You think this administration would have made it like more straightforward, but the new filing system, I had all the filing fees memorized. Now I got to go to chart every time. I'm like, okay, if this like this, if I'm on this, it's like super convoluted. And people self filing are definitely making a lot of mistakes, especially missing deadlines because of it. Are you guys doing a lot of NIWs recently in the last year or so?
I've seen. I don't do as many. There's an NIW panel at our conference that I know are individuals that do a lot of those filings. I think one of them's Robert Weber,
Hmm.
another one Jonathan Grode. We are doing EB2 NIWs. Um, Obviously, they're definitely the preference du jour for a lot of green card cases, and they seem to be acceptable right now to USCIS, and they're open to them.
Hmm.
So we are doing more of them. I haven't made a cottage industry out of them, and I probably won't, but we are doing more of them.
Yeah, the
I,
new
I know there are some attorneys that do a lot of them.
Yeah. Rob Weber doing a lot. Bob Weber, and we're seen as like I don't do as much. But then when the Biden administration came out with the new guidance, we really upped it on these STEM ones, and they've been pretty good. We haven't gotten any RFEs, but cases where before I was like, I don't know if I accept it. Now we're doing it, and it's going well, especially if they're doing something in national interest, like a particular thing. But obviously, it's national interest, but more scientific STEM, working with Department of State,
Sure.
but I was emailing Bob Weber about this. Unfortunately, he couldn't. I wanted to come on as well, but he was saying that we recently saw an uptake in RFEs on this. So the winds change,
Yeah.
and you never know. It's like real winds. All of a sudden, it's going this direction, and swam, it goes the other way. So the agency, you never know which way things are really going to go.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was guidance certainly that for STEM fields that seemed to encourage EB2 NIW and even more O1 filings for STEM individuals. And yes, I don't know if it's been 2 years, but it's basically been 1 to 2 years where EB2 NIWs, people were getting as many in as they could.
Yeah.
And I have heard the same, I think probably Bob, maybe I don't know him that well, Robert Weber. I'm not good friends with him like you are. Robert Weber will probably talk about that, but I have heard again anecdotally of more and more RFEs, and maybe that window is closing a little bit for how USCIS is treating those NIWs.
Yeah. And I guess one of the breaking news is right now is the Visa Bulletin issue where they ran out of EB1 cases. Now it is the end of we're recording this September 10th. The new Visa Bulletin should come out any day now. So it's October 1st, the new fiscal year. So, we'll see what happens with these timelines. They get better, they get worse. But it's kind of when you're consulting with people about how long it's going to take, I'm always like, I don't know. Like, it's like, how do you not know? I'm like, no one knows. It might go forward, it might go backward.
Yeah, I saw EB2 was just hit, I think, yesterday, finally, for this fiscal year. So that stayed open for a while. I was surprised I had an EB2 Indian National Green Card approved last week.
Mm,
So that individual must have just snuck under the
yeah,
wire.
barely
So
made
we were
it.
happy about that. I can only assume that next year's dates will somewhat be similar in progress as to what we saw for this year. I don't think there'll be huge retrogression in anything. I don't think there's going to be huge forward advancement.
Yeah.
Um, the ones I look at are just the rest of the world EB3. That's really frustrating when that's backlogged. And hopefully, from what I saw of dates for filing in September, I think they do anticipate that that will move forward again. But for Indian nationals, my best guess is the same type of progress and movement as what we just saw. I don't know why that would change. More and more are pursuing EB1s,
Yeah.
so maybe there will be continued backlog in Indian EB1. But I mean, it was COVID that allowed for a huge jump, a temporary jump for those immigrant visa numbers for a few years. I don't know what event would happen next, other than a change in how they're going to count the numbers to see any really big changes. I usually try and tell Indian nationals, obviously no one knows. I would factor in 10 years
Yeah.
because some of them say it's going to be, they do math and say it's going to be 83 years. I say, well, you really can't. There's no data that's consistent to give you a formula, but let's just say potentially 10 plus years.
Yeah, that what you're saying makes most people do make this 80-year crazy number stuff that no one knows. It's probably not gonna be that long, but it's still gonna be long. What one issue I'm getting a lot of consultations this month has been people who get the visa, but their children age out, and I do the CISPA calculation, and they just age out with like 3 months or 2 months. And it's like, oh man, that's hard. When it was this close to getting the kids in, and now all of a sudden they're moving here and they can't get the kids on the case.
They're aged out even within the being able to file within 1 year of when it was available.
Yeah, so the time you could detract from the kid's age by the time the visa issuance when the case comes current is just too late. Like they'll lock in the fees essentially somehow they get it in, but a lot of it is like F4 F3 as well. But even these EB they just miss it by a month or two because the case was approved too quickly. Like especially with I-130s when it's like sibling stuff. And I see
Mm.
USCIS takes a year to do a marriage case or a year and a half sometimes, and then they'll do an F4 category done in 6 months. And it's like, really? Like, are they trying to intentionally like make sure the nieces and nephews don't get in on this one or what? But when that happens, it's just so harsh. But that's I've had a lot of random consultations about it. Might have done a video about it, and a lot of people saw it. I don't know. But those are the harsh consequences of U.S. immigration.
Yeah, the oldest child. I certainly have cases where that oldest child is kind of left out of the grouping for a green card process, and that's really hard on families.
Well, very cool. So, what is like when you woke up this morning? What's the biggest thing happening in your practice that's on your mind?
Probably the biggest thing. Well, one thing I'm waiting on is some perm adjudications from the new flag system. So I didn't get any in necessarily right in June of last year, but we started filing in July and going forward. So I don't have any adjudications yet. I know they're closer to like 13, 14 months right now, but I'll be curious to see some perm adjudications. Again, anecdotally, I believe it was either Vince or Nell yesterday said they heard a report of a perm that was approved in a week. It was filed a week ago. Uh, and so that's a funny story if it's true, but they said, yeah, someone had a perm approved in one week. The other thing kind of taking up my day in, day out for a while now is a lot of acquisitions. A lot of our corporate clients have been acquiring other companies. And anytime that happens, there's a slew of immigration issues that need to be addressed. So
You're the last person they tell when they do it, probably.
we're the last person they tell, and it's like 10 years or whatever of immigration matters that are all now on you all at once.
Hmm.
It'd be 30, 40 people that now want to talk about their H-1B and their green card process all at the same time. So that's kind of taking up a lot of my time. I mean, I don't know what it means. It could be just random, but I've seen more acquisitions within the last 1 to 2 years than
Wow.
in a while.
Do you guys charge hourly for those, or is there, because like all of a sudden you're swamp slam with work that's gonna take the whole weeks up, and you gotta move aside stuff? Is there do you have it separate? 'Cause you work with HR, so they kind of want to fix fears. They want to know what's going on ahead of time. How do they deal with the billing on that?
I still do it as flat fee, so I look at what needs to be done for, depending on how they're going to proceed for H-1Bs, if we're just going to accept the liabilities, all the paperwork that needs to be done to update the public access files and all of that. Um, that's kind of one grouping. Another grouping will be travel letters, and when they're applying for a visa with an approval notice in a different company name than the company they're working for now. So helping with travel letters and packaging everything to prove success or an interest. That'll be a separate kind of block. And then all of the other actually handling any filings would be the same. But I still do it all as flat fee.
Very good. Wow, there's so much like really good information in this session. Back to back, both the last one I had that was last part, this one like just real hardcore practice help. I really liked it a lot. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show again. I hope people get a chance to see you in upstate New York. But if you want to reach out to you, what's the best way? Do you have social media, LinkedIn, email, website? What do you prefer?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. Either LinkedIn or email is probably my two biggest communications.
Perfect, Andrew. I appreciate it so much for coming on the show again. Stay for a couple minutes afterwards, but thanks again for coming on. Wonderful, wonderful podcast.
Of course, thank you for asking me.
You got it. Wow, another great episode. You could tell right live, I was learning a lot from what was going on in that podcast. And I'm seeing my video right now myself. I've a lot of work, a lot of kid stuff, lack of sleep. I could probably I look at it right now, but nonetheless, I learned a lot from the episode. And as you can tell, we're just the podcast is knocking out of the park, home runs with the interviews we're doing. If you want to get this kind of info, especially for family-based marriage cases, we have a whole course. Now we have a free CLE kind of library. If you're a lawyer, just hit me up, info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com, and send me your bar info so I know you're a lawyer. We'll add you there. Tons of ongoing video library being produced with great speakers. But also, if you want a formal course on family and marriage-based immigration, consular processing, adjustment of status, what 212 is about, what 245 is about, what ATFR regulations are about different sections, all that kind of stuff. We have a course. Just email me. You're going to change your career, and it's going to make a big difference in your life, the rest of your life for you and your family. Email at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com, the marriage immigration course, the ultimate marriage immigration course, put it that way. I'm immigration lawyer John Casarvi. Thanks again for listening. Have a good one.